Good evening. My name is Karen Schubert, and I am the director of Lit Youngstown. I would like to welcome you to this reading about labor and poetry. And I would like to introduce Allison Pitinii Davis, who will introduce this evening's poets.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited about both of these authors and their collections. We'll start tonight with Joshua Gottlieb Miller. He received his PhD and MFA in poetry from the University of Houston, where he also served as poetry editor and digital nonfiction editor for Gulf Coast. Joshua has published poetry, essays, scholarship, hybrid, and multimedia writing. His writing has been awarded fellowships from the MacDowell Colony, TET Writing Conference at the Yiddish Book Center, and elsewhere. And from 2018 to 2019, he served as the inaugural post-Harvey Think Take Fellow at Rice University's Humanities Research Center, representing folklore. His writing has won the Indiana Review Poetry Prize, the Imprint Bartholomew Prize in Poetry, and the Imprint Robert J. Sussman Prize. His debut collection, The Art of Bagging, won Conduit's Mary Stina Esteban First Book Prize, and his second book, Divik Americana, is forthcoming from Wesleyan University Press. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you so much, Allison. Thank you to Lit Youngstown for hosting us. Thank you to everyone who's tuning in. I'm really excited that I get to read for y'all. Everywhere, all over. It's incredible. I'm going to be reading first from my book, The Art of Bagging, which I am very excited to share some of these poems with y'all. I'm going to read a few new ones just because it's nice to keep things fresh. So I'll start with one of the first poems in the book. This is Co-Extrusion, which this is a book that you've probably seen the cover before. The Art of Bagging. It's set in a grocery store. In fact, it's set in a Trader Joe's, and you're going to notice that in some of these poems, like for instance, poems about co-extrusion, where you make the peanut butter pretzels that are both peanut butter and pretzel. Co-extrusion. A middleman is suing our chain for cutting them out, and customers want to know more, but not about the 100-foot oven cleaned of peanut butter again and again by someone whose labor is more repetitive than mine. For what? So you can eat a snack that explodes during its manufacture? Ashley wonders if we also ever find a word really weird for no reason, like fork. Yesterday, she couldn't get over how weird fork is, and today it seems okay on perfunctory inspection. Whale means ocean, of course, and seahorse, ship. But the word kenning is only 200 years English. It seems strange that something as simple as a fork maintains the capacity to inspire wonder. I'll never get to clean that giant oven or walk the tops of warehouse rows, humbled by the many aspects and manifestations within the word manufactured. Its limitless forward movement in space and instant. Time, long related to tide, coming in and going out, rising and falling, willed by the moon's changing position. An idea that once seemed so amazing we needed words to explain it. Now we don't think of as invented. And so we're just going to keep diving into the grocery store. This is the brain trust. Barry and I have arrived at a philosophical impasse. Ray, where to put all these unattended bags of pears. It's the brain trust, boss says, hurrying over, losing his breath, worried we are secretly preparing to ruin Fruit Island. Intentionally naive, there are parts of this job I keep for myself. At checkout, the Spanish professor can't imagine an Ogongora, or with an audiologist, share a minute of disbelief at the ins and outs of the human ear. My coworkers have the most amazing names after botanists and brewers of foreign origin or religious, historicity inherited and continuous. I just know of Gongora, really, how hearing trades volume for clarity. And if I knew all of them, I would be able to tell you so that you know. Which one is opera singer, printmaker, cartoonist, DJ, water engineer, translator, gamer, addict, three-job dad? Another poet works here. Keith's odes have gotten darker. Wish I knew everyone better. It's luminosity. Ruskin said beautiful art can only be produced by people who have beautiful things about them. He meant nearby. Glowing fruit stands, radiant cans, synonymless vegetables. Architect, build the store over and over. Cartoon eyes fill aisles, a child's sight line. Cereals pace lower shelf heights, brand animals bathe. Baby gorillas, pandas, talking extinct birds. Walls paint lake scenes, fields golden, orchards multiply. Our street of 7 years mural, family pharmacy on the other corner, florist, liquor store as if from overhead, beside animated caricatured surviving our gummy bear drugs and roses. I have these pieces in here where I try to kind of get out of the store every now and again. I call them studio time, or sometimes they have fiction in the title. I'm not going to read the entire poem, but just read the end of Studio Time, the next poem in here. Why would someone else imagine you were here? You can be a poet's poet or an artist's artist. You should be able to be a people person. And I'll let that be a lead into the next Studio Time. This is a little bit later in the book. Maybe not the next exact Studio Time, but another Studio Time. Coworkers, shoppers, boss, our friends, neighbors, exes, everyone thinks we'd make a decent reality show, a better ensemble sitcom. Something on in the background while you do the at-home equivalent of coming to the grocery store. Everything we do is art, given the right voiceover. When the door opens just a little bit, it doesn't open all the way. You got to push. The door's not open, you have to push anyway. In my being discovered fantasy, I'm not on my phone at the mall. My face turned just so. I'm not writing a letter to the radio show, right? The episode on a highly promising student who forsakes college, until the reporter, previously the student's teacher, goes through her checkout line by accident. I'm not a featured attraction busking with a typewriter by the wine. Near every day I spend 1 work hour wearing a wine cork lei. Intimate our store's pleasant inner monologue. No facing product, fixing signs, passing out samples. Allowed to answer shoppers' questions, but required to assume you have no questions to solicit. So I write a lot about myself in this book, which feels a little bit weird. I also have a number of interviews with coworkers. Maybe not the right spot for reading some of those, but they say some amazing things. And I love that part of the book. But here's a little poem about writing about myself. Isn't it the ghost that's haunted, and not his dead-end workplace? I'm tired of writing about myself. It's like anthropomorphizing a fictional character, a waterfall. Our grocery store confuses, splitting between genres of combined, absurdly. Lists of days with plots inside each dazed cashier, boss, and stock girl. Smile, you work here. A shopper grins up at handsome Christian, our daily representative in Craigslist's missed connections, gently hugging lugs of frozen on his hand truck. If this is the same day Caroline fluffs flowers, Barry balances pears, holds them with his eyes, they fall, he starts again, synchronized. He just happens to work here. If this is the same day Christian complains about the rude remark, Caroline, how the shopper sauntered past, Barry, how she sang. This is the Romantics. J.S. Mill at 16, ripping his clothes off to write genius memos. Pedantic philosophy at 12 in dead languages he learned years before with the ease of an overworked boy. Me, a lot older, a bit obsessive, very neatness, otherwise pleasantly, relentlessly ungenius. I leave the register its mouth without barely containing a contradictory energy. Offer junk wisdom, lose no part of me to prodigy. I'm jealous of Mill. Perhaps alone in my jealousy, not for his talent and vision so deeply felt, but that he loved poetry without ulterior motive. Mill recovered himself after his nervous breakdown by reading the Romantics. He was heroically literate. Mill went to the graves of Keats and Shelley just before the idea to write On Liberty was visited on him. We must cram into it as much as possible, which we wish not to leave unsaid, Mill wrote, before continuing on to Sicily and the Greek island of Corfu, where he thought he might settle. Florence and Avignon, where his wife was buried before On Liberty could be published. Bags break most easily by their handles. Fruit spoils from its softest spot. Think back to a time your feelings could be shared by all human beings. When did you last take a moment alone? Privately confess yourself. So poets often do this thing where when they have 2 poems left, they like tell you or warn you or threaten you. I'm not sure which, that they've got 2 poems left. I'm going to read 2 more poems from this book and then just a few new ones. Grocers debate the apocalypse for its effect on backstock. Lady, nice lady, wants me to know Jesus works the night shift. Hide her brochure in my back pocket. Like a ritual, I shut my mouth. I don't like to be reduced even to something bigger than me. I think this is a fun one to end the book on. A pleasant, good, happy experience. Once a shopper confessed, the sun really brightened my day. Next in line, the next after her, I invoked it like a mantra for weeks. We encouraged to feel help means what you'd want it to. Monotony requires effort. Non-effort is a kind of effort, Linnea tells herself while I pull hidden cans of baked beans into the light. To be seen and held, I'm paid to imagine. I feel sorry for Sun Guy he came through my queue and not Cloudless Linnea's. My beard is friendlier than I am. But my special skill is I'll wring anything from anyone. I wrung up Sunshine's words until a shopper complained I'd said the same to someone in front of him. And then I wanted to steal his regret. I had nothing new for the brief shock of time I'd contribute to his purchase. I'm thinking big picture, Angie tells herself while I holster my lucky green box cutter, carry half a case of baked beans to the go back flat cart. And if I think I'm above all this, that's because I think we all are. But Angie and Linnea know it, whereas I just think it. Whereas I look up and down grocery. I don't know how an aisle scores the name grocery, or why I convince myself I have to make that information mine. The Buddha says if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill the Buddha. When my father was a child, his mind looked like a filing cabinet, and though I'm a poet inclined to believe the world is a text we are writing, I often wonder what's happened to the hard drive of my mind when each morning I load slower and slower. Metaphorical death by flash flood, by spider bite and sniper sights, by accidental landscape and broke bridge, and endless sinking city in the poems of my youth. I want to steal all of it, the Buddha and my father and every outlandish death I could look up to, if I make every hour count. Thinner ice makes more sound. Disasters bore quietly ahead. So we'll leave the grocery store for a little bit. This is a newer poem called Split Screen Multiplayer, which if you've never played side scrollers, those are those games where you go just like side to side, like Super Mario Brothers. And despite the fact that games have evolved quite a bit, my son still likes those too, which is nice. Split Screen Multiplayer. Raised on side scrollers, each stage a level up, flag and castle. That dopamine rush of a map unfolding, world laid bare. As a boy, I pretended moving forward took intention. Now every big boss is me, somehow indifferent. Aimlessly raiding the fridge, cutting a slice of mild cheddar from its shrinking block. Using one hand to look at homes on Zillow, washing red, seedless grapes, touring houses flooded and remediated. Slipping grapes off their stem, multiplying future raises against current interest rates, till I'm paralyzed. As if someone I'll never meet left their controller face down. You need to live a little, my son says, before I drop him off at school, meaning it at least at first sincerely. He'd skip work, play every video game. Why wouldn't I, just for today? I can be his avatar. I've got no time for side quests, but when I take the long way on my commute past this single stretch of flower blur before the Volvo dealership, small, convincing details. Riding the city limits, passing giant transformers, mobile gas stations, a vast expanse of autosave. One raised highway levels up over the trees until I can see the brains of the forest. Afternoon, he takes one look at me, then stares out the window past his school. Any time to think, he says. I idle the car, watch him fish from the backseat a book he'd read before. He's reading it again. He doesn't care how it ends. I'm fighting the urge to ask about his friends, what he learned, and he has yet to tell me again to live a little. They taught about experiments in school, he says. Theory means you have an answer that's not always right. On cue, I'm convinced we're on a speed run, and just as quickly that I was wrong. I used to think living in a video game meant I could do anything. The rest of our drive, I puzzled the code to keep alive this save point, to hack the secret level, as if what I teach can change me without having to learn it. So I have a poem about artificial intelligence and prayer. I think I have to read it here. Splinter. I can't help thinking about the first scribes. When a rabbi tells me he asked AI to write a prayer for healing, raising what he described as thousands of years of human knowledge into 3 swift paragraphs, to charm that chasm between generic and universal. Once the rare art of writing was wrung from impatient hands, assembly lines formed to copy the same page again and again, naive masters subsuming themselves in repetitive perfection to faster spread the holy writ. Now we find the image of the human in our cars shining light from their eyes. It's not that he regretted looking back to look forward, but looking back, what the AI did, after all, was not write but describe, ascribe at worship. We give a face to the machine, which is not the machine lying to us, but us lying to ourselves. It's only a trick we know when a magician uncoils from a straitjacket, severs himself from a locked cage, but we forget the alphabet is both literal and symbolic, from alpha to beta, from aleph to bet. Give me a heart where a feather should be. No matter what you see, I see. No matter what I do, I see. It's a silent partner. This is from the next book, Divic Americana, which is coming out next fall. Very exciting. And this is in kind of a similar tradition of the interviews from the grocery store book. This is from an interview with my mother. According to the angels gossiping about us, if all Jews practice the Sabbath at the same time, the Messiah will come. Out of the corner store, out of the warehouse, and the boxing ring. Out of the showroom, working nights and weekends, and they can't touch you, the angels. They get as close as they can. For weak eyes, customs agents turned away the Talmud scholar I descended from, Ellis Island. But not his son, the boxer. In England for money in the ring, then in America with anyone bigger than him who told him so. One day he'd buy a dance with Ginger Rogers. Queens would wear his furs on Queen for a day. He worked his way back and forth across the Atlantic. He'd serve as a cabin boy. It was easier that way to smuggle his brothers over. Once on his way back from England, he ran into one of his customers. She said, "Mr. Gottlieb," and he said, no, that wasn't his name. He gave a different name. That wasn't who he was. And he had her convinced that somewhere he had a twin, because that wasn't him. When he went back to work and she came to his showroom, she had the most amazing story to tell him about the person she ran into on the ship that looked exactly like him. You know, he couldn't have been him. No, it wasn't him. I don't think he ever told her. I don't think I ever told you that story. I think if I'm lucky, I've got time for one last one. And this is from a new series, once again, talking to fellow workers. I worked at the back desk of a museum. And this is a poem from talking to Philip, who also works that back desk. Concierge style work, visitor services, idols. I've worked to put everyone I ever met into one poem, or two or three, however many it takes. Just yesterday, I talked to an artist who sits now at the same back desk where I sat at the museum. And like a concierge, welcomed visitors we called patrons. And when he discerned that point in time of natural light coming in, and so that's very much in stark contrast to the week before when there was a lot of raining and it was darker. And my favorite is when those lobby lights aren't on and it's lower lighting, and I get to live this, like, romantic fantasy of me sitting at the desk and just staring aimlessly into the middle distance. I wondered why I couldn't shake that image, as if I was inside it, as if memory isn't a kind of prediction. Empty myself out, fill myself up. It seems unfair to Philip to claim the same romantic fantasy, the same main character syndrome. Outside, the live oaks jutted up. Beside me, one artwork stood its lonely vigil. Sometimes I wouldn't visit a single gallery. I'd clock in, glance up from my laptop, and give a brief spiel to however many hundred strangers came all that way to change themselves. But I wouldn't even look at the artwork beside me, unless someone was about to touch it. Then I would shame them into prayer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Josh. I know you didn't read your interviews from from the new book, but they are wonderful, as is the whole book. Thank you so much. I'm now really excited to introduce our next reader. Rosanna Young-Oh is a Korean-American poet and essayist who was born in Korea and grew up in Long Island. Her writing has appeared in publications such as Best New Poets, Harvard Review Online, Blackbird, The Hopkins Review, and 32 Poems, and has received honors that include scholarships from the Sewanee Writers Conference and New York State Writers Institute. Her poetry was also the subject of a solo exhibition at the Queens Historical Society, where she was an artist in residence. A graduate of Yale, the writing seminars at Johns Hopkins, and the University of Wisconsin-Madison, she lives and writes in New York. The corrected version, winner of the Diode Editions book contest, is her first book. Thank you, Rosanna.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you for Lit Youngstown for hosting Josh and me. A real honor to read with Josh, as always. It's going to be a tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. So, like Josh, I write grocery store poems. My first book takes place in a grocery store because I'm the daughter of shopkeepers. My parents have owned a grocery store for 30-something odd years now. But it's also about solitude and yearning for freedom through art. So you're going to hear poems that aren't directly related to a grocery store. And I'll end with a couple of poems from my manuscript in progress. This first poem is called Homework. In addition to the grocery store, I grew up on Long Island. So this book is really about Long Island too, which emerged as a character as I finished this book. So, homework. I wrote in Mrs. fifth grade class in Jericho, Long Island, this short answer for homework. It's been busy for the past few weeks at home because of Yom Kippur. I stay behind the register to bag the groceries. My dad wakes up at 1 to buy fish in the Bronx. Sometimes I gag if he smells bad. When mom's store chores are done, her hands feel rough from rose thorns and steel wool. I got a check plus for my concreteness. The teacher wrote in red, "Your friends at school can learn from you. Present this after recess." So I obeyed. A boy's laugh cut me through. Should I pretend my stories are untrue? I wrote this next poem when I got a job that my father approved of. My parents have told me, they've raised my brothers and me to believe that we are that we should live lives that are easier than theirs. So get a good job. And so when I did get that job that they approved of, I kept thinking back to what he said and wrote this poem. It's called Picking Blueberries. It was a risk my father had taken in midwinter, ordering 240 pint boxes of blueberries in less than desirable condition at a discount, so they could be repicked, repacked, and resold. We stand together before crates of blueberries, the color of river pebbles in water, some flecked with mold. I am 29 years old, and yet my father instructs me as though I were a child again, hiding between the aisles of lettuces and squash in the store. "Daughter, look," he says. He squeezes a blueberry between his thumb and finger until the skin tears. I see now, rotten ones bruised to the touch. We pick in silence. By the second hour, our fingers stiffen, their nail beds purple from juice. Suddenly, my father's voice emerges as though from a distance. "You were not meant to live this kind of life." But nor was he, a man with a mind made wide by books, who as a child rose with the sun to read by its light. We're left with fewer boxes than we had thought. How to price them? $3.99 per pint. The problem with myth. In the story my mother tells, the angel never returned to heaven. The woodcutter stole her cloak of wings while she bathed by the mangroves and took her as she shuddered in the wilderness. They married, they had children. Such are the premises of womanhood. Out of childish greed, I liked this version where motherhood is a virtue. Small-shouldered, my mother goes out, then shuffles in, arms heavy with laundry, to ask my father what he believes. He disagrees with whose tragedy the story is, hence the corrected version. The angel was to blame. The woodcutter was seduced, moonstruck. Love breathed the moon in a syllable of radiance as the cicadas sang, clinging to each other in the numbing light. Beauty justified the coveting, the ring of an angel, or woman rather. Eventually, she found the wings under the bed. Standing in the hush-hush of the hourless forest, he watched her fly away above the garden. This next poem refers to a Korean ballad in which a son carries his mother on his back to leave her to die on a mountain. And she, as the mother, she leaves the pine needles on the ground as on her way up, so her son may find her way back home to the village. This next one is called The Village Seamstress. 1. We have been waiting for her, the girl with the nimble fingers. Is she sewing now? The elders asked her mother. Nodding, she opened a screen. The girl sat upright on a mat, her black braid a river behind folds of cloth, a rope she never could untie. 2. When she married her husband, she married his family, just as old women's joke predicts. After 30 years, her hands began to tremble. No more sewing for the entire village, no more paying back. Seeing no way out, the seamstress said, there is no way out. 3. On the climb to her death, the seamstress clutched at the pine trees, one hand swollen red from the needles, the other clasped around her son's neck. What are you doing? The boy wanted to ask, the lightness on his back. What on earth are you doing? 4. Yes, that woman will die on the mountain. Yes, we believe the mountain is Buddhist. This much we are willing to know. 5. When the seamstress's son returned, he found the old men at their table talking about the harvest, watching the smoke rings waver into the shadow of the mountain. So my family is Korean American, and there's a ritual called Chesa, which basically means we have a lot of food. We cook up a lot of food in a feast, and we honor our ancestors. So this poem references that ritual, and it's called 3 Women. When her mother died, my mother burned a letter without ceremony or complaint. In the kitchen, she made tea and watched my father write it in Korean, as was the custom. It was the first poem my father had written for her. His muscular hand and the willow pen moved together on rice paper. On the porch, he lit the match and she held the letter still until the ashes broke. To the boy with the basketball across the street, the fire must have looked like an act of violence or protest. It is not that simple, I wanted to tell the child. It is self-sacrifice, something more outrageous. The wind rattles the dried eucalyptus on the windowsill, carrying the words, the rain ghosts that linger in the summer cold. We were both filled with wishes, my mother and I. She let hers burn, and I went to read mine in a book of poems. The next poem is a sonnet. It's called Reading into the Fire. Reading into the fire. Since no one else had closed his eyes, I kept mine open. In the distance where a man had sat, a life-sized bulb of flames began to spread out petals, curled thick like script. No sound came out, no muscle twitched. The scent of oiled cloth and flesh tattooed the street. Oh God, I read an anger in that heat, and how his body, disobedient, collapsed into its hollow. What came next to mind was not a prayer to invoke his flaking bones, nor where the ample smoke would go, but fitting his death to subtext. If fire heals the pain it brings about, if fire works from the inside or out. This next poem is called Feeding the Koi. And I keep thinking, I wrote this one in the winter of 2022, spring of 2022, excuse me. And it's a poem about fear and anxiety about the world, about chaos in the world and everything that's going on. And I realized that it's only been amplified since then. Nothing really much has changed. So feeding the koi. I turned 34 and it was spring. The distant war we had thought would end did not end. My friends were busy trying to get pregnant, making love on schedule. I visited my neighbor's water garden at dusk. The Lily Pond's mirror, a school of jewel-like koi, weaving and rifting. I wondered whether I was a dutiful daughter or coward, whether returning to Jericho would make a mess of everything. Fear had carried my life, and I was still afraid. As I scattered pellets into the dark, the koi shot beyond the floating plants to where the food fell. Later, from my bedroom window, I watched the moon set with my heart in my mouth, its longing a tenderness. The skate fish. As he witnessed her dying, my father asked his mother what she wanted to eat. Under the dim light, her eyes swelled into crepuscular bulbs. The dried fruit of her lips contracted in anticipation. Skatefish. It took him hours to find it. In the end, my father bought the animal frozen, its cerulean skin studded with salt and cabochons of ice, the spine and tail straight in the plastic bag. Thawed on the table, the head shone like a greasy mound of candle wax, the cartilage of its skull springy. In the afternoon sun, the wings wilted like great cabbage leaves, the sinewy drama of its rhomboidal body gone slack. For weeks, I visited the ray by the windowsill. Don't touch it, my father said. The house smelled fiercely of ammonia as the carcass fermented. My father holds the steamed meat now in a spoon. She leans forward, rolling the bits in her mouth with her tongue. She waits for more. He tears more in his hands. I'm going to read two more poems from this collection. This next one is called Landscape with Monk and Sea. and it's an ekphrastic poem. It's based on one of my favorite paintings, The Monk by the Sea by Caspar David Friedrich. Landscape with monk and sea. Though it is unclear whether the single figure in the painting stands upon a high rock or a grassy dune, a man is facing the sea. We know that his robes are as dark as the black waters. We know that the clouds are white, full and beyond the reach of the monk, who rests his head pensively in the palm of his hand, which we know to be a significant posture in art. Let us say that the white caps of the waves could look like seagulls or symbols for the crucifixion. Either will do, as long as we connect one to the man, the only vertical in an endless expanse of sky, bereft of a storm to console us. And the final poem is called The Woman with Leaves for Hands. The Woman with Leaves for Hands. Nowadays, my father's mind comes and goes as the wind. During last night's rain, he watched the maple leaves turning from beneath the eaves and thought my mother was passing through. All night, the leaves turned, weaving themselves into arms, weaving until the woman he once loved and the tree, shaking before him, were one. He named her name, then waited. He still believes in the silk of her voice. It comes and goes as the wind, he said, that characterful wind. What should I have done? It was not the foggy cold I was afraid of, nor the strangers staring at him from the road. No, it was the mind repeating itself out of hope, a mind that inhabits the same metaphor over and over, populating the earth with talking winds and talking trees. In my mind tonight, my mother lies below the grass, too tired to speak. Her limbs are not maple. They do not move at all. I'm going to read two poems from my manuscript in progress. I have two younger brothers. One of them is a Marine, and we're very proud of him, but often I thought, as I saw him go through the entire experience, sometimes I thought, he grew kind of tough in a way that made me feel a little sad, but still very proud of him. And so anyways, this poem, Reunion, is something I'm sorry, it's not Reunion, it's Hide and Seek. It's about my relationship with my brother and how we grow up. Hide and seek. A child can hide in only so many places, whose hallways and bedrooms, whose tunnels and fields. Ahead, father shadows stain the walls, blocking my exit. A fly zooms by with the crack of a bullet. I lower my body into a Clorox bathtub to play dead, dulled like a good daughter. My brother slips into the night as he is used to. From the kitchen, the sound of knife against bone, metal scraping metal. Then silence comes. I go searching. Brother, brother, all clear. And he emerges hungry. Home is home because where else is there? At 18, he lives in Quantico among brothers and sisters who do not look like him. At least here, he says on the phone, they expect nothing. I finally find him at the kitchen table, a soldier eating a Big Mac with extra pickles, extra sauce, and store-bought cheesecake, a darkness from another darkness. Let me be clear. My brother is not lost, but where is the boy decked in shadow? How can I grieve one without the other? This poem is called Reunion. I graduated from a good school, and I went to my 10-year reunion last fall, and you know, all my life I'd been told, oh, going to a great school like this is, you know, it's going to be the best thing that would ever happen to me, and I believed it for a long time. But when I went to that reunion, I had some thoughts. So hopefully this poem encapsulates some of those thoughts. Reunion, and the epigraph reads, "For God, for country, and for you." And it seems like nothing has changed. You remain a student of your life, and there's your potential not to waste. En route to cocktail hour, you pass the names of Yale's sons carved in requiem. And was it just last week that you stepped through Woolsey's columns for dinner after gasping in Bass Library at the part when Turnus does die after all? It is Pallas who strikes, who sacrifices you, who takes this payment from your shameless blood. The heart-spearing, ultimately an act of divine justice, you had argued, meaning every word. In the years since, you learned how to pay taxes in this country that your parents chose to work themselves to death in, that your brother Jay spent his 20s fighting in Iraq for. In the dining hall renamed after a distinguished financier, you slough off your former self, acne shell with untamable hair, terrible at small talk. She asks, "Why did you bring me here?" "Networking," you remind her. To get ahead in this life, it's true that you must assume better versions of yourself, like the snake shedding its old skin in water, ad infinitum. Though towards what is often the dilemma for a nation devouring itself. Beyond the waiter's tray of canapes, Troy before the ships, gleaming in soft focus as in a prophecy. The presidential hopeful, CEOs, and their unborn descendants, and so on, all shaking hands. You check your lipstick, pretend to love your job. Foolish girl, you're already naked. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosanna. That Yale poem is amazing. And all the poems about your parents are so beautiful. Thank you for sharing them. Thank you both, Josh and Rosanna, for being here tonight. And thank you, Lit Youngstown, for hosting. And thank you for having this conversation with labor, with your work together. I'd like to, I believe Lit Youngstown is sharing links for both of your books for purchase on the YouTube. Thank you everyone on YouTube who joined us, and I encourage you to support our readers and buy their wonderful books. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Youngstown. Thank you, Rosanna, for that amazing reading. That was amazing.
Thank you. Thanks, Josh.